Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar from SPEC Innovations called Innoslate for Academia. My name is Joanna Moore, and I will be your moderator. We have a special webinar planned for our academic community today, but before we get started, let's go over some quick housekeeping. During the presentation, feel free to send us your questions, and we'll get them answered in the question and answer part of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn through the Innoslate user group or through Twitter using the handle @Innoslate. The webinar is being recorded and we will make it available to you after the live presentation, so be sure to keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I would like to introduce to you our presenter, Dr. Stephen Dam. He'll be sharing with you how to get started with Innoslate as a student, benefits we offer academia, and useful tips and tricks. Dr. Dam is the president and founder of SPEC Innovations, as well as one of our DODAF training instructors. He has been involved with research, experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. Dr. Dam is a member of the LML Steering Committee. He has also received an Expert Systems Engineering Professional certification from INCOSE, and currently he is applying system engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. Feel free to send Dr. Dam any questions through the LinkedIn user group or send him an email. And now I will hand over the controls to Dr. Dam and we will get started.
Thanks. So a little bit of our quick agenda, just a few slides, and then we'll actually get into the tool and talk about the specifics of the tool. So a little bit about our background. We started in '93 doing systems engineering and software development support, as well as proposal support for many contractors in the industry. And so we in that process, we stayed involved with the academic community, trying to keep up with the latest and greatest techniques and tools and capabilities for doing systems engineering. We've been particularly an advocate of model-based systems engineering and what we would call real model-based systems engineering, and now digital engineering in helping move that boundary forward. So Innoslate was developed because we really were looking for a capability to make it much easier to communicate and do systems engineering activities. So we designed it to be a very modern, intuitive approach to model-based systems engineering. Particularly the students will find they gravitate to this very quickly and easily. There are no downloads, so you don't have that kind of problem. So the startup problems are much reduced overall. I've used it personally as an adjunct professor at George Mason University in teaching classes and found it to be an extremely useful tool for that purpose. And the students, as I said, jump on it pretty quickly. We like to say it's a tool designed by millennials for millennials, and it does seem to work that way. Older people like me struggle with it a little bit, but we come up to it pretty fast too. So you'll find that it gives you that full life cycle solution. So now, particularly as you're trying to learn systems engineering or teach systems engineering, it really does help you see that bigger picture for all the different things we do throughout the life cycle. It is free for academic purposes. We have a version that's you're automatically upgraded. If you sign in with your .edu, you're automatically put into the academic community. We're doing some other things for universities, so I'll talk to a little bit later. As I said about the students getting started immediately, there's no downloads. They're used to seeing how to use it, this kind of a tool. It's all web-based, so that there's web resources and they can do the kinds of things they're used to doing today with modern tools. Also, the live collaboration makes it much easier to work as teams, and you can set up teams. The professors can set up teams for the students to be working together, and it's very effective that way. Also, there's a reviewer capability so that the professors have a way to comment directly on the student activities, so you don't have to print out documents or create new documents and go through that laborious editorial processes that you go through in terms of making comments and responding to comments. So this is something you can make in more real time if you'd like to, as you go through the process. Innoslate in general is designed for simplicity. It gives us this ability to work with the different languages, but particularly because it's based on a very strong ontology, which is the lifecycle modeling language. We also went web-based because we wanted that scalability. That gives us the large scalability and the collaborative capabilities. So we had to go web for those purposes alone, but it was also the modern technology. It was the future 10 years ago, and people are finally realizing, yes, the future is here, and we are starting to do those things. We have, for collaboration, we actually have real-time indicators, so you can actually see who's working on what when. There's emails that can happen with the workflows. There's group chats. There's just a lot of things to help you interact and work together. Another thing we strive for in the tool is accuracy. It's very important for us for you to see the information directly and be able to test it to see if it makes sense. And particularly the models themselves you build, the functional models, need to be tested through simulation. And so we have both a discrete event simulator and a Monte Carlo simulator. And those do allow you to work with cost, schedule, and performance parameters. It's not just a scheduling or time-based tool. It gives you all those different dimensions you're looking for in terms of resource allocations and resource modeling as well. So it's very complete in that regard. On the softer side of things, where you're looking at like requirements analysis or traceability, those kinds of things, we've adapted a branch of artificial intelligence called natural language parsing and machine learning. And what we do is we use those techniques to read things like the requirement to see, is it a good quality requirement? So we actually have pre-trained machine learning algorithms that we use for that purpose to make that determination. Another application of it is for what we call intelligence view. It has 68 heuristics it looks at to see how good your modeling is, your techniques and things like that. Again, you can see the benefit of having that kind of feedback when you're trying to learn how to write better requirements, create better models. So this can be helpful for that. And of course, it's very helpful for the professor for seeing how well people are doing and are adhering to the kinds of good rules of thumb, the good basic standards that people use for systems engineering. We also have lifecycle management support, full lifecycle. We actually do requirements analysis and management. We have the full modeling capability. There's 24 different diagram types right now and counting. We also have the graphs. We've just created a XY graphing capability now that can be used within the tool. There's a test center to capture your test expected results, your actual results, and track them together, link them back to the requirements. Again, all complete one package. But probably one of the most exciting things to us is we're pushing this idea of documents view. Now, documents view, a lot of people are poo-poo documents. Oh gosh, documents are just horrible. Well, yes, they are if you're using Microsoft Word, because you can't access the information as easily, you can't trace it, you can't reuse it, so that makes it hard. But we're using documents as a model. So now documents just is another form of displaying the data. So it could be graphically, or it could be textually, or it could be both. And we include both capabilities within the tool. We also generate a very strong system requirements document directly from your models. So now that's another way to use that capability and start integrating it and seeing it that way. Ultimately, documents are a very useful tool because it's a great communications tool. Also, of course, interoperability. We're constantly working on making it easier to move data in and out of the tool. Your data is your data. You should be able to use it wherever you need it, and that's our philosophy. So we do believe in the one life cycle. A lot of people don't like the V model. I happen to love the V model. I think it gives us a good indication of the kinds of things we're doing throughout the life cycle, and particularly allows us to look ahead and think about the things we should be doing in advance. For example, if I'm doing architecture development, I am actually should be thinking about how I'm going to go through the operational test and evaluation transition process, how it's going to be operated and maintained, and even what the demolition disposal functions are supposed to be. That's my job as an architect, is looking at that entire picture. And a lot of people forget that part of it. They focus on this very narrow portion at the very beginning of the process instead of thinking through the whole process. So again, as I mentioned, we have a documents view. That's often the starting point. You're taking in documentation that's currently existing, whether it be standards or it be actual requirements documents somebody's already created. Maybe it's policies that people have adapted as well. So those are things you might want to start with. Of course, a special type of that is requirements. So we have a specific view for requirements documents. That brings in our quality checker and other features that help you with it. By the way, both these have baselining capabilities, so you can baseline any document as you need to throughout the process to help you with your configuration management. Also, I guess I mentioned the 24 different modeling types. We have SysML, all the 9 SysML diagrams. We have the lifecycle modeling language diagrams with IDEF zeros, class diagrams, timeline diagrams, risk diagrams, lots of different diagrams that you can use. They give you that whole breadth of the way you want to visualize data. And if you've got other good ideas for additional ones, we're adding them all the time. Please give us your inputs and thoughts on that. CAD Viewer. So CAD Viewer was one of our first attempts at integrating design engineering results back into the systems engineering tool. So you often will create a specification through the first part of the V process, and you hand that off to your mechanical designers, and they start building their CAD drawings. Well, you want to take the results of that to then see, can I trace back from that drawing to the different things I started with to make sure that it's being met, that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we have that ability to bring in CAD diagrams, then create our own physical assets from it so that you can then use them to trace back and then make sure that they have met what the need was. And of course, simulation. We have discrete event Monte Carlo simulation. I mentioned that earlier. We are looking at other simulation types. That, of course, can be used later in the life cycle in addition to testing and other methods that are used for verification and validation. But of course, the nice thing is that since that works with the modeling, it can be used early in the process to make sure your models are logically correct, don't have bottlenecks built into them. You can even do the resource modeling part of it to see if I have the resources that don't have the resource constraints on the problem. So that gives you that whole breadth of things. And of course, as you go through time and you're improving your knowledge of the system and you get more design specific, you can take distributions from information from maybe computational fluid dynamics tools or things like that you need, that then you can use in your simulation in more depth in the V&V cycle. And last but not least, on the design side of this thing is test center, being able to capture those expected results, your actual results, your status. And of course, your test planning has to begin early in the life cycle phase because there are many long lead items you need for test evaluation, such as test facilities, maybe test ranges if you have to do that, or creating automated test equipment. So you think about all those things you need to kind of look ahead on. This lets you start capturing that information right away. So even though we show this stuff on the right-hand side of the V, it has a utility at the very beginning as well. And of course, we can't forget program management. So we have risk analysis, because risks are part of the systems engineer's job too, is to worry about mitigating risk. And of course, timelines. Timelines are important for scheduling. If you're trying to create a systems engineering management plan, you need to have your timelines. So here, that capability is in there too. And of course, we have others, cost analysis and things like that. So how do you access the academic side of things? It's very, very simple. You just go to the main web page, sign up with your .edu email address, and you're automatically set up with in the academic organization. And I'll explain organizations a little bit more in a little bit. So if you don't have a .edu email, or you're from out of the country, where you might have a .edu, but it's usually with a country code too. just let us know that. Contact us, contact our support line for that purpose, and we'll get you set up with the academic version. Also, if you're using it for research projects and things like that, or you have special needs, like you want to use the APIs and things like that to build off of it, feel free to do that as well. And again, we're happy to help you get set up for that. So first of all, also, if you're a professor and you'd like to have your own academic organization separate from the general purpose academic organization, we can set that up for you. We've done that for many organizations. We are currently expanding that program. And so I think, if you need something there, please let us know. If that happens, oftentimes your students will come in and they will have 2 organizations at least, if not 3. They may have demo, they'll have academic, and then they'll have your specific school. And so it's very easy to know how to use managed projects to move from one organization to another. And so but that might cause some confusion at the same time. So it's something we're letting you know about. It's an availability, but we can help you understand. Once you're in there and using it, that one, it'll almost immediately go to those immediately for you. So you don't have to worry about that problem. So let's just jump in and show you a little bit more about the tool itself and how it's used for this purpose. So as I mentioned, you can go to our main web page and sign up for free. That's here up on the right. And during or before or after you do that, one of the things, there are all kinds of other resources available for you here. First of all, if you notice there's a chat with us, that's for support help, and you are included in support. The support email is support@innoslate.com. Also, there's a phone number, okay, that we only guarantee times from 7 a.m. Eastern time to US Eastern time to 4 o'clock US Eastern time. But if you need special arrangements, or particularly if you're in another country and you need special times, you need special access, just email us and let us know, and we'll see what we can do for you, see what we can do to help you with your problems. We don't want anybody to be frustrated using the tool, so please feel free to contact support if you need to. Now, by the way, most of the students won't have to, because what they'll do is immediately go, oh, there's a help, let's go there. So selecting the help section, oh, wait a minute, a 101, there's all these guides to help me get started. There's an administrator's guide, by the way, for you professors who might have your own organization as well. There's a user's guide, okay? So in the user's guide has all kinds of information about the different views and how to do things, down to very great detail. You can get to the point where you are looking at something like simulators and looking at the simulator controls and scripting. So it shows you how to do scripts. So there's just a lot of information here and available for you to do what you need to do to learn the tool. Now, of course, today, this is frankly for people like me who are little old-fashioned and like to have users guides. There's, of course, the YouTube channel. And so you could go to the YouTube channel and see, just type in Innoslate and it goes immediately to it. Starts off with Innoslate for beginners. That's getting a little dated, but it's a good way to start and get the general concepts. And you can go on and see more recent activities and webinars. And of course, this webinar will be posted to the same channel. So one of the big things that is important, as I mentioned, for academia is having an organization can give you some good benefits. So here's an example of the organization dashboard. I happen to pick the George Mason University capstone project. They do a senior level project, undergraduate project level that's kind of their capstone. And this has become one of the best practices in the academic community. And so you can see the users, how many users there are at a time using the tool. And of course, there are always peaks and valleys. Of course, the interesting thing with students is often the peak is on the weekend which is totally different, the peaks for the commercial area. But you just can add users here. You can set up teams this way. You can even set up, create a schema that's across your entire organization. So every project within your organization has it. And so once you decide that you've got that set up the way you want, you come over here and create to the main dashboard here, so you can see this is what I see particularly, because I'm an administrator of this, so I get to see all the different projects that are going on. And of course, all you have to do to start up a new project is click the new project button, and that will let you create your first project and start working in the tool. To get to manage projects, if I do need to go to different places, I notice here I have quick links. So these are the ones I've touched most recently. So that's here. I can create a new project from here as well, or I can manage projects. And of course, it signed me out, which it will do as it's supposed to, because it times out after about 30 minutes. So I've been sitting up here for too long. So let me go back to manage projects. There we go. And so this will let me also switch. So this actually defaulted to my main SPEC Innovations account. So if I wanted to go back to that one, I would just scroll down to find that particular one, and that would take me to it, to where I want to go. So that's how you switch organizations. It's very simple, very easy. And also this lets you find projects. You can set up folders for the projects as well. So if you wanted to have separate project folders, I'll show you one I have for SPEC Innovations that I use. So things like all my demos, I have all that here, or Innoslate specific things that we're using, how we're using it for doing things with our testing and our management of the tool and the evolution of the tool, things like that, or proposal work we do. So all kinds of different places we have uses of this with the filters for that purpose. So oftentimes, you often start a new project and there's a dashboard at the project level. And in the project dashboard, you can add widgets. These are the little things I have here. And you can see there's an activity feed, there's the bar chart, commenting, all kinds of different things, tables you create. And you save it as a project preference if you'd like. So if you look through some of these widgets we've created, here's a wiki panel, and that means I can post information. This can include live diagrams. So actually we have the ability to embed our own live diagrams in the tool, from the tool, charts, tables of data. So you can do an awful lot with this, embedding information into this view. By the way, that can also fit into any description field of any object. You can embed these kinds of things. Also, this is just showing me the entities by class, so it's showing me what I have, how many entities I have and what areas. Here's an example of a bar chart where I'm looking at requirement status, and so I have to look at that. And now if I come over here, you can see comments feed. So this is a great way, again, if you want to interact between the students and the professors. This is a great way to work together and help communicate and find it. And you can, these are all hyperlinks, so it goes immediately to the entity view of that object, and you can go use the back and forth for the commenting. So let me just do that real quickly here. So here's one where I had a comment, and so I wanted to check the states and modes of this because I think there might be problems with it, this particular model. And so then all somebody would have to do to respond to that would be come in here and type in the comment, add it, and so we can go back and forth. And you can ultimately resolve your comments or delete them if you decide that's an inadvertent comment you didn't mean to leave. Also notice, by the way, there are back buttons. There's a back button for the browser. There's a back button up there, so you can very easy to navigate using browser technology. This is an example. In the middle here, you'll see a table. It's an example of information I happen to have captured. It's the top requirements. I have a query for that purpose, and you'll get used to using the query language in database view particularly. And then this is setting up the columns that I want to use. And we use this same user interface all through the tool. So you'll be doing very similar things as you're using here. So once you see you're doing it one way, one place, you can do it the other way. You can do the same thing other places. Over here to the right is the activity feed. This is a very useful one. Again, it shows you who changed what, when, what they specifically changed. You can again go directly to that object and look at it. If you want to go directly to that object, you could go then and also look at its history. So again, we create history at the object level. I love this particular one. I get to see who's done what, when, particularly as an instructor, as a professor. It helps me see who's working on the project, what are they doing with it, that kind of thing. Also, by the way, if you accidentally delete something, it will show up on this activity feed as deleted, and there'll be a little restore button that comes up with it. So, which is really nice, because that way you can restore it back if you accidentally deleted that object. And then, of course, our feedback form. This, we really appreciate the feedback. This is, again, not for help. This is for giving us good ideas to how to make the tool better. We're always looking for that input. We do update releases almost every quarter. And so it gives us a way to make sure we can accommodate interests and ideas that everybody has. And so everybody, again, is welcome to use that, and we want you to use that. Now, if you notice at the top here, I've got the menu bar, and the menu has a number of items I've pinned up on it. In fact, I've pinned up most of the dashboards or viewpoints that I use. I use most of them on a daily basis. So, but if you don't want to see all those, all you have to do is unpin them or pin them back when you're ready to do that. As I come down, I'll explain these different views in a minute. Here's, if I see a little bubble over here, it looks like talking. Yes, it's a chat window. This also shows me who's online with me, so I can chat back and forth with them. So that's always fun. And then sharing. Here's how I share with people. So I come here and I determine how to share with individuals and with teams. So any teams that have been defined will also get included. So this is one of the values. If you're using this as your own organization, you get that list of who's available within the organization to share with. If you're an academic, we don't allow that because, again, you have mixed groups of people. So we don't actually have that ability. You'd have to put in their username or email address directly here for that information. And of course, you can share with people in different levels, different roles. And of course, if you have your own organization, you can adjust those roles as well. So that's another thing that can be valuable depending on what you're trying to do. Let's close that. And I mentioned the managed projects here at the last. So that's the last piece of that. At the very last there, of course, is your account. You can change your profile and update your password, things like that with it. Okay, so very simple, very basic kinds of ways to work with it. By the way, to get rid of the chat bar, just click it again, it gets rid of the chat bar. So in terms of the structure of Innoslate, we capture information as, and I'm going to go do something a little unusual here for me. So we have different classes of information, and you create an object or an entity for each class. And entities can have attributes and relationships associated with them. So if I click on that entity here and I want to see its attributes, in this view, I would have to add those attributes to see them. But I can see the relationships associated with them directly here. Another way, of course, would be to open the entity view of that object, and there's all my attributes associated with it. Now, since the attributes are available in many of the other views, you don't have to do that, but you can set up the tables how you want to. So with that, also relationships may have attributes associated with them. If you notice here, I have an attribute associated with this, which is the amount. And so this says how much of this asset is performing this action. And so that's what the purpose of that is. And of course, you can hide that as well. So we have, so if you want to think about in terms of language, the class itself, objects are your nouns, your relationships are your verbs, your attributes on the nouns here are our adjectives, right? And then the attributes on the relationships are our adverbs. So we have a very strong language that underpins the tool. And again, that's the lifecycle modeling language. It's an open standard and available for anybody to use as they need to use. And we also have the ability to extend that using our schema editor. So you can add things as you need to as well to capture the information the way you'd like to capture it. So let me walk you through some of the other viewpoints. Well, actually, since I'm in database view, let me start there. There's a query capability at the top here. We have a number of pre-selected queries like is top and order number. So what that does is let us get a hierarchical look at these different things. So I can look at that way. I can also, once I have the queries I like, I can save them. So here's a way I can see things like a risk matrix. So I click on that. Now we actually have a visual risk matrix as well, but this is a nice way to see it in the table kind of view. Or if I want to do a mass roll up, I want to roll up values. So I would click on this one, I'd go to more, do a roll up, and then select that attribute I want rolled up, which is mass. And what that did was it actually reads the hierarchy of this particular subsystem, the payload, and it is going through and adding up at the leaf level the different values. And so when you see a discrepancy between the two, well, one is one I input, the other is what it computed from the other information. So I could apply that if I want to, or I could say, well, that's telling me I've got a problem maybe that I need to deal with and I need to adjust and slim down the weight in some of the other components. By the way, if you wanted to see that visually, all I have to do is select open and select the hierarchy chart, and there's that hierarchy I was just talking about. If I want to see the different values, they're right here. And I can edit them right here as well. So again, lots of different ways to work with it, the information as you need to. So I mentioned documents view is often a place people start. They'll import a document using the import analyzer, and again, we can talk about that in more detail. There's many details about how to use the import analyzer to bring data in. As you're using this, you will see the requirements part of this is pretty full formed. I get a name, number, and description, and the description is the actual requirement. And so that's where you'd expect to see shall statements and things like that. If you run the quality checker, you notice this quality score over here, that's from executing this quality checker button. That's all you have to do is click the button and it'll check the quality. If you want to check the quality of the entire document, make sure you don't have something clicked and just hit quality check. It'll check the whole thing for you. If you do want to just do a specific one, you click it and do the quality check for it by itself. Now, what makes up quality is the attributes: clear, complete, consistent, correct, design, feasible, traceable, verifiable. And we have definitions for all those. You can see those in the schema editor, and we also provide 2 other ways. But that shows you the different things that we roll up to create this quality score. And by the way, they're not weighted. They're all evenly weighted values. We automatically check 6 out of these 8. There's only 2 we can't auto check, which is correct and feasible. Is it legal and is it possible? Those are human intervention needs to be used there, or human intelligence would be appropriate in those situations. But notice here where it's found problems, it tells you things that are making it less than it could be complete. And down here, the verifiability, since there is no shall statement in there, we haven't made a strong enough statement about the verification. There are, of course, other things that make it unverifiable. You'll find things that are overlaps between this as well, where the clarity is reduced because words were used loosely. Let me see if I can find a good example of that. Yeah. So here's an ambiguity. It says potential is high. Well, what does high mean? You have to define high. So those are kinds of things that are ambiguous terms that we look for too. So again, that's all NLP kind of trace checking for that. Also notice there's these little S's and T's. Those are indicators of relationships have been established, and the relationships are satisfied by or traced to. And we use those for different purposes, usually in the tool. The trace to is often traced to other requirements or to specifically to an action, where satisfied by could be either an action or could be an asset, could satisfy the. And we have another one that we use for test cases where we tie that to the testing side, which is verified by. And so if I go to another, I'll go to another example of that here quickly, which is my verification requirements. So you see the V showing up here now. So if I click on that one and go to those relationships, I can see some of the verified by relationships available. Now, of course, there are a lot of ways to see this information and work with it. So I'll show you some other examples of the traceability matrices and things like that that you can tie together quickly. But notice here also how we're using labels. We use labels to help sort and filter things. So in this case, I'm looking at, well, what items do I are actually tests? So I just select that and I can see which ones are specific tests I'm going to be actually running. So those are an example of how you could use the label filtering. Let's see. By the way, reports are available here, of course. Different types of reports. There's a little reports button at the top there. Any view you're in, those are the reports that are available for it. And usually what you'll see in there is what you see is what you get. So how you've set this up is the information that will show up there. And to change that, you come up and go to this little toolbar, there's settings. You can adjust the columns, adjust some other things about how you're viewing the document. As I mentioned also, there's baselining, so you can see the different baselines. You go to a previous baseline, and then notice all the other buttons disappear except report. So that gives you, you get an idea how to use it that way. Another quick thing, if you're getting into modeling simulation, we have all kinds of diagrams. So you go to diagrams view to create diagram types. We have many different diagram types for you. Again, functional, physical, and they all work together so you can see them in different ways. So here's an example of, let me just grab this one here. So here's an example of an action diagram. Our action diagram is our primary behavioral diagram. If you want to see it as a SysML activity diagram, you just select SysML. And that's the activity diagram, and it just shows up in that view. Again, these are all modifiable. I can simulate these from either this view or the other one. We do find that the action diagram, though, resonates very well with almost all users because they immediately see what these things are. Rather than being a construct, it's a special case of an action. So this is now my entrance and exit criteria for my loop. Here's my entrance and exit criteria for my OR. So my decision point of which direction am I going to go. And then with many of these, we have built-in scripts for you so that would help you determine whether you want to do a probability or using resources or create your own JavaScript script. And again, we generate these for you for the simple cases. When you try and do something very complex, you may end up wanting to do a little bit of that scripting as well. Of course, that's available in the tool. It's using JavaScript. So again, a very common language is being used as a basis for this scripting. And of course, now if I want to it's also decomposable. So you have the ability to decompose things and go down to the lower levels. Again, if I say, well, wait a minute, I really want to see this as a sequence diagram. We look at it that way. I can see it as a sequence diagram. Okay. Let me go back up. So let me run the simulator for you real quickly, just to show you how that works. So it's really selecting the simulator. It's then, and there's my model. See it in 3 dimensions. So I'm working with that. And I set up the settings here. I can set up the speed, the calendar mode, things like that, and then make sure you save your settings once you're happy with them. And that includes also adding in pictures, the different views of things. I think I've got all these different viewpoints up, so you can see the different charts so you can create from this as well. Also notice there's a console, so you can get transcripts and you can do things with that, and you can write to the console. So again, this is a way to help debug the model as well. If I hit play, and of course I can pause this at any point and just step through each step if I want to go through it, or I can just resume it and hit the play. Again, this can be run in real time with prompts, so you have the ability to actually do tabletop exercises with it as well. So we've done that. But if you notice, I'm looking at cost. It's adding up cost values here. I'm actually going through and creating timelines. This is in a Gantt chart format. I've got a cost curve going on here. In this particular model, I have forest fires being found by a satellite system. And so once the forest fires are detected, which I'm modeling as a resource, the forest fire, then the firefighting team comes and brings water to put it out. And let me speed this up just a little bit so I get the point where you see where the water starts being applied. There we go. So the water starts tying up here, and then at some point you run out of water and you have to go refill the tank. And of course that takes time. So it takes a while to come back, and so you see that loop iteration occurs. Takes depending on, and of course those can all be randomized and done at different values. So this particular scenario can go for a while, so let me speed it up. Sometimes I think we've modeled this after California wildfires, which never seem to go out, but this particular one took 5.5 months to put out. At least that's what the model said. My total cost was in the hundreds of thousands. That's probably much more in reality if you were looking at these kind of wildfires. And then you can see the different resources and stuff. There's my console showing me issues and things that might be coming up, or things I want to put out. So again, that's a very quick look at that. The Monte Carlo is very similar. And the way we operate the Monte Carlo is you can put distributions for things. So you type in an equal sign in the duration field to get a distribution. This script was a probability script, so you can see 95% of the time it's going to go to the normal branch, but 5% goes down the contingency branch. So that also gives you randomness. So many other ways to put randomness into the modeling. So Monte Carlo becomes not only a viable option, but a necessary option to have a better idea of how it works. And by the way, both these simulators execute in the browser. So you have that limitation in terms of the size of the simulation. I know we've run some big ones and had to cut back on some of the visual elements because of that, because the browser memory is limited. Unfortunately, I think it's to 2 gigabytes. I think most of the browsers have that limitation to them. So this takes a minute or two. It's actually executing, again, that same model over and over, running the different random seeds. I'm only going to run it 100 times, and of course, you can set up however you want to. By the way, we use this for project planning too, so we have the ability to create project outputs from both the discrete event and the Monte Carlo. So when the Monte Carlo finishes, you get these nice distributions showing you the time variations. So it went from anywhere from less than a month to as long as almost over 8 months. So can be, and of course I could have a large variation then in terms of that, in terms of the expense, the cost of it. Again, those are just some quick things you can do with the simulators. Let me hit Test Center briefly for you. Again, set up a new test suite here if you need to. But you do have the ability to create test cycles. So you can have multiple tests and you work through it as well. And in here you can see the different things. Now, what's kind of cool about this is that this class is a subclass of the action. So this test case class being a subcase of the action means that I can also see this as an action diagram, which means that I can actually model my test processes too. So I can use the same information to do that kind of modeling and help me resource manage it, load it. I think you can start seeing how valuable this could be when you integrate this back into the overall test plan, which you can again create in documents view and use all this information and things from it to improve that test plan, to flesh out that test plan. Now, one of the things, again, people think about is traceability. So here's traceability, traceability matrix. So we do that through a variety of different mechanisms. I'm going to use a query for this. You notice all my verification requirements started with VR. And then the relationship I want is verifies. And that shows me how I've connected these different test cases to the verification requirements. And I can look at the verification requirement here directly and edit it right here. Same thing with the test case. I want to improve my test cases as I go through that process. And then to make a relationship between them, all I do is click an X in the box, okay? And if I'm hovering over any cell, I get that name, number, description, so it can help me see it. Now, of course, you get some pretty large matrices. It's nice to have a little help. So there's a traceability assistant, which is another NLP tool. So that works very nice in the cases where there's information enough for it to connect it. In other cases like this one, there's no description field. So obviously I haven't finished fleshing out what is that test enough detail to say that would be in it. But this would be the kinds of things that would help me write a better test case to say, oh, I got to make sure I include in line inspection and things like it. In the line inspection, I need to include that looking for markings as well. So things like that. So this again, these are aids to help you do better. And of course, there's also a suspect assist to show you where it's definitely finding problems or holes either in your design or maybe you inadvertently connected something you shouldn't have. And so again, it's just there to help you do that. The last quick NLP thing I want to show you was intelligence view. This is particularly useful. The set of heuristics came to us from work done at Stevens Institute of Technology and Naval Postgraduate School. Dr. Kristen Gianmarco was integral in coming up with these. And so here are all the definitions for these heuristics that were created and that we check for. So again, these are very valuable for making sure you have really good modeling practices. It's a great learning tool too, to say, well, what should I be doing? How should I be using this kind of modeling? So again, that's kind of a quick overview of the tool and how to use it for academic purposes. I'd like to make sure I leave some time for questions. So let me throw that open for Q&A now, and we'll go to that section.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Dan. Let's see if we have any questions.
Okay, I didn't see questions. No, I don't see any questions at the moment.
I have a few questions here, actually.
Okay.
Actually, it looks like you went over this one. Is support available for students?
Yes, absolutely. I want to reiterate that because it is important to us. And people say, well, why do you do that? Most people don't. Most people charge for support, first of all, but for us, it's part of our normal fee. But even this is free. Yes, you get support. We don't ask you for any information about a contract or license number or anything like that. We don't care. we think it's very important. And so feel free to use that as you need to. I think you'll find that you probably don't need to a lot.
Looks like I have another one coming in here.
Here we go.
Do you have curriculum associated with the models, or a portal for users to share curriculum?
Oh, so in fact, we're in the process of developing that. I have a new book coming out on model-based systems engineering that should be helpful as a text. And so that would be a very valuable, and it's using the tool. My other book on the DoD architecture framework has that already. So if you are doing DoD architecture framework related things, that could be used for that purpose as well. But we do have ideas and things we can help you with that as well. And of course, what we want to do is create a share space where you can do more of that sharing of the curriculum and other information. And we'll be happy to share that as people want to share. So that'll be great.
Cool. Got another question. How does this make a professor's life easier? What about the student's life?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that helps as a professor is that, again, things like these heuristics that go through and look for problems in the modeling, things like that will help you score and grade things easier and quicker and help identify problems. And of course, it helps the students at the same time because they get to see those same kinds of things. Also, the commenting, I think, is very beneficial, a quick way to interact and be truly interactive with your students back and forth. So those are a couple of the quick ones for that purpose.
Another question. I saw you have Gantt charts. Can MS Project Gantt charts be imported or exported?
Yes, we can export to project. We can also bring in from project as a CSV file. So that works very well. And we've done that many times.
Next question. Can you please provide more info on how Innoslate interfaces with doors?
So our goal is to actually replace doors, but you can interface with doors in a variety of ways. Doors Next Gen has the ability, since it's web-based, to use hyperlinks. So you can interface that way. We also are working on RecIf. So we have a RecIf export import capability being developed, but we pretty much can go back and forth already with CSVs. And so we have a CSV importer export capability that works very well as well. We do keep the unique identifiers so we can track those as well between doors. So there are ways to go back and forth, but our recommendation is get out of it because you lose the value of having a single database with all your information in it and tied together completely. So doors is very narrow in its focus and capabilities. It doesn't have the NLP capabilities in it. It's missing a lot of things that you really want today.
Next question. Can we have an offline replay of the session?
Yes, this will be posted to YouTube, and it'll be one of our webinars posted there.
And I believe we also have the ability to download that from YouTube.
Yes.
I will check with her to make sure for that one.
Okay.
That's a very specific request, so I'll
yeah.
make sure to notate that for them.
Okay. Next
question. Can you please comment on how Innoslate maintains privacy of customer data?
Sure. So in fact, that's why we built organizations. Organization gives you a security sandbox to work within, and that gives you data privacy for that organization. Within that organization, then, though, you can have projects that can share information between things. We also have redaction capabilities between those cross-project things. So if people don't have access, and a good example of that is here. So here I have a document that contains information that not everybody who has access to this project has access to that other project information. And so it gives me this indicator here that I've got things in there. Now I have access to both, so I would be able to see it, but at least lets me know that I shouldn't let someone look over my shoulder, find the super secret requirement that's from another project. So again, that's again, I believe, very unique to our tool in terms of that kind of capability. In terms of cloud privacy, of course, if you're using our cloud instance, we have access to that data, but there's only 2 of us actually in the whole company that have total access to that data. But if you want your own instance, of course, then you can contain all your own privacy as you need to. Of course, we don't bother looking at other people's stuff unless they ask us to do it. What else?
Next question. Universities are very concerned with ADA compliance, which is very hard to do. Have you done anything to make your software ADA compliant?
So we've tried to use ADA where we can. Americans with Disabilities Act is a challenging one, but you see things like here, we have not only colors, but like the word optional is here, to indicate this is an optional data flow. So we do things like that wherever we can. We'll have the words come into play, not just colors. So some of that, but I mean, obviously, if you got visually impaired beyond color, that's really tough to do with modeling kinds of capabilities. So certainly that's something we want to continue to improve and figure out how we can make better. So if you have any concepts, ideas of things where you think would be helpful along those lines, we certainly would be very interested in those inputs.
Next question. What if I'm an international student with no .edu account?
Yes, so again, contact our support group. They will set you up with an academic version. We're happy to do that. We do that for over 200 universities around the world. So we're happy to help support and improve the discipline across the world.
Awesome. See here. Well, it looks like that concludes the question and answer portion of the webinar. But if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. We'll be happy to answer your questions after as well. But we would like to thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. Looks like we have lots of helpful resources right here too that we'll be happy to provide to you as well. So here is a good look and glance at those, but if you want those links sent to you, we'll be happy to do that as well. And the next step looks like we've got students. Go ahead and get started with Innoslate in your classroom. You can go ahead and request personalized demos. You can request your own organization, and we are actually currently working on a lab manuals very, very soon. Professors, do create an account with your .edu address and use the academic organization. We do have lots of webinars on that YouTube channel Steve already highlighted for us. You can look at, and also feel free to reach out to us with questions. We're very happy and here to help. So.
And we did Q&A, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us for today's webinar. As a reminder, we will be putting this webinar up very soon on that YouTube channel. We will send out the link to the recording as well and the presentation slide deck for everyone. We do encourage you to visit our website and our blog as well and connect with us on social media. You can request to join the Innoslate user group on LinkedIn for updates, news, and tips and tricks related to Innoslate. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you again for your attendance and enjoy the rest of your day.